Hello and welcome to another Classic WoW with Mao podcast. We've got a great show lined up for you today. We'll be talking a little bit about the new /WG function that has been discovered recently in World of Warcraft. Layers have been lifted across all servers, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that. And of course, we'll be talking about the creeping up of more customer service issues, this time affecting our realms. Quite possibly most noticeable figure. But first, how you doing today, Myth?
I'm doing great. It is another lovely day. Just doing well. All right.
Yeah, we are getting ready for a raid here in a little bit, which is always exciting. I'm quite excited to hit the Molten Core and Zul'Gurub with the boys. You know, just generally enjoying our waiting for the AQ gates to open era that we're now currently in, I would say.
Yeah, and I think tonight we're actually mixing it up a little too, and we're gonna do some of the Lord summons in Silithus as well.
Yeah, the Lords have actually been a great spot for those that have wanted to get some of that world PvP frustration out, because the battles over there have been absolutely incredible. And in certain cases, they can get a little rowdy and maybe not fun. But I think at a lot of times, like the world PvP phase, you spend enough time battling each other in an area, and you definitely start to grow a mutual respect with the people sharing your zone and get the opportunity to create a lot of great memories. And this, to me, is kind of one of the fun parts about the lead up to the AQ gates, is we're about to get ready for a 10-hour war, and setting some of those rivalries back up definitely happens in Silithus right now.
So this is the sort of world PvP that I think is like actively good for the game. Like I complain a lot about like how toxic I feel a lot of the like griefing sort of world PvP is around like world buffs. But I feel that world PvP in Silithus now and leading up to the gate event is like truly what good world PvP is. Because it always starts as like you're doing something by yourself and someone shows up and kills you. And then you res and you find them, they're doing something, and you kill them. And then eventually you've killed them and they've killed you so many times that they bring in a friend. So you're like, okay, I'm going to go get some of my friends. And eventually you have 10-man guild groups out there fighting each other like a war zone.
Absolutely. That is really what I think the designers had in mind with PvP servers in general, right? It wasn't necessarily the idea about constantly griefing someone so much as you would be having to fight naturally over objectives and things like that.
I don't know. It's just, in essence, it feels like exactly what world PvP is designed to be. Not the... And I won't get into it past this point, but not like the camping the Fellwood Flightmaster so you can mind control people and jump them off the mountain.
Yeah, we've definitely gotten to this phase of the game where if there's unhealed wounds that you have, they're starting to come out in some pretty creative and maybe not necessarily healthy ways in the grand scheme of things. But for those that are looking for some good battles right now, Silithus is definitely that. And the fighting over objectives is to me at the very heart and soul of what good WoW PvP feels like in the open world. And while there may not be the perfect solution to PvP servers, it's while I will always end up going back to them because of the organic feel that you get during some of those great rival fights.
Yeah, and so that's really like the essence of what I love about PvP servers as well, is like forming rivalries with either people or guilds that you sort of recognize in the world. And that's, I don't know, I think it's just productive for the game. Like I think it's much better for people who are like stressed out and want to just go and kill the other faction to be doing it in a place like Silithus than griefing people who are just trying to get to a raid zone with a bunch of buffs on.
Well, and the great part about it too is you end up going to Silithus knowing that it's a battlefield, which prepares you differently, right? You're not going to get so upset about being killed if you're there to actively wage in the war. And you're going to be more likely to have it be something negative if it's just done as a way to grief you or just kind of take away, some of your abilities from the game. And this is why the AQ Gates is such a great event overall, because it really does promote what I think a lot of us would consider to be the more fun, more organic, basically more faction-driven PvP than it is really kind of individual instance PvP that, sometimes gets a little bit out of hand, so to speak.
Yeah, I can agree with that completely.
So definitely excited to be getting some Silithus action in today, in addition to our raids. But one of the things that has really caught our server's attention recently has been yet another customer service issue, this time affecting one of the most notable guild leaders on our server, Kurthos, as he's gotten the temporary ban for, I guess, gold sales, which I'm pretty sure goes back to the sheer amount of GDKPs that this guy is running.
Yeah, I think he's just replaced running normal raids with running GDKPs at this point.
Yeah, I think originally it had to do with the fact that he was on a different time schedule than a lot of the raids, the rest of the raids in his guild. So it was kind of out of necessity at first, but it was really filling a need in Grobulus's community, which is a lot of us have characters that didn't have a raid to be in, and we would love to get into GDKPs. We love to be able to bid for those items that we're never allowed to get in our loot council or on our alts or any other number of circumstances, and it's given those players that have had some time to accumulate a lot of gold somewhere to put it, and that is just made for a great environment, especially when the raids are running really, really smooth. But the flip side of that has been the method, all the mailing out of gold and all of that seems to be in stark opposition to the flagging system. And I almost now wonder, with Kurthos getting hit with this, I think that, we can expect to see him back at a certain point if he's not back already. But are we going to maybe see less GDKPs if things like mailing gold out is going to flag you for a ban?
I don't think so. I think people just have to take more time and actually just do the trading in person. It's a little bit more annoying, but I think overall the GDKPs probably won't stop. Although, yeah, I mean, they really shouldn't be punishing the person who's handling the GDKPs. They should be punishing the people who are pretty obviously doing the gold buying.
Well, I think what happens, I think, is that whatever their automatic flagging system seems to have been triggered for one thing or another. Maybe it's a certain amount of gold sent out. Maybe it's a certain amount of gold coming in or a certain number of trades. It's not really clear what that flag may have been, but it seems to have been one of the automated system flaggings. And we've had this happen to members of our own guild before. There have been plenty of instances that have popped up on Reddit, and it's almost become the default way to get attention is if you've been unjustly banned, bring it up on Reddit, and that's actually improving your chances to get unbanned, which is also kind of problematic if you ask me.
I don't think it's problematic. I think that there's an automated system. And I think that there's, and you could probably attest to this, definitely not enough employees working in customer support that have, a huge plate of stuff to deal with. So when higher up customer support or a non-customer support person who's perusing Reddit happens to see something that seems like either a mistake by the automatic flagging system, or something that maybe doesn't seem right, they have the ability to bring that to people's attention. And I think that's probably the automatic system working correctly, if we're being honest. Like, there's always going to be I think there's always going to be some people who get flagged that probably shouldn't, but it's probably flagging more people who are doing things against the TOU on average than people who aren't.
Yeah, this is actually kind of a interesting spot to talk about because we don't really know who gets hit, right? Like, if you're an illicit player or a bot or something like that and you get taken out of the game, no fanfare happens. Hopefully we don't know about it. We never even hear about your character, and they never, really hit the consciousness. It's only the false positives that really negatively affect you. But then on the flip side of this, we do still see a lot of bots that have somehow managed to skirt some of these automated systems for so long. And it seems like there's more and more unjust bannings happening relative to the amount of, reports that, are coming out that are, incorrect ones, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I also find it you never hear about the bannings for like the bots and the people who are doing things incorrectly. I think it's really hard to judge like the frequency and stuff like that. But you are right. It has been like a bit more constant these days. So maybe like they need to, I don't know, maybe they need to actually look at what the algorithm is actually doing a little bit and like reassess if they're getting so many false positives or so many inaccurate bans. Maybe have like some sort of customer service, like a smaller department dedicated to like at least reading over, like have it like flag people instead of like automatically ban most people. Like, I guess it could automatically ban incredibly egregious people, but it could like flag warning sign people and just have like a couple of employees just like looking over flagged accounts and either approving the bans or denying them based on whether it's obvious that that person's cheating or participating in like aftermarket gold selling.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, it would be, I would imagine, given the sheer number of people that trade gold with Kurthos specifically, he's probably got his hands on some illicit gold legitimately on his end, right? Like, there's just no way that he doesn't have at some point have had illicit gold pass through his account. It's impossible, because we just know that there's clearly a market for it. Some people are definitely out there buying, and some of those people are going to his GDKPs with that, with that blood money. So it would make sense that he might even have legitimately hit some sort of a threshold where maybe it did kind of make his, account kind of look similar to some of these other instances, in that it was getting traced back to some of these other illicit accounts. On the flip side of that, though, the concern with all these extra bannings that I've been seeing that are kind of more unjust is that there hasn't really ever been anything to go the other way to make it seem like there's going to be ever anything done. I think that just is the way it's going to be on Blizzard games. And that's actually kind of sad, because I definitely remember a time when getting the call wrong when it came to denying somebody's account was a very, very big deal to Blizzard's customer service base. And it definitely happened, but it definitely seems to be happening much, much more now with the current system. Like, where Warden may have gotten the occasional person, I feel like it banned almost everybody justly. And we didn't get a whole lot of people that were banned from the automatic systems back then. And we were doing a lot more individual bannings back then as well.
Well, so back then, Warden was probably significantly less advanced, right? Like, you were a GM during WoW's initial inception versus they've had, 15, 18 years to develop that system?
Yeah, there's no way it's not working at levels that it previously wasn't even capable of. I don't even think that would even be, the slightest thing up for debate. I do think, though, that in trying to maybe widen the net more, it might be part of it, but I don't necessarily know that these are all Warden specific. Like, a lot of those things had to do with breaking things like going faster than you were capable of going in the game, or reaching parts that were not technically accessible by normal keystrokes and things like that were more likely to flag. Whereas this is kind of more behavior that just seems like it could maybe be off because of, that, or maybe it just gets connected to accounts that have done things that have definitely, gotten in trouble.
So, I mean, you tell me this, because if we're being honest, you played WoW before I did. I didn't, like I said, I didn't start playing WoW until the patch of the Blackwing Lair came out. So, tell me this. When you were playing WoW, let's say before BWL, right? When Molten Core was like the only big raid that existed, how prominent was gold selling?
Wow, now that's a good question. And I want to say that it was probably in full force already by then. But it's hard to say because, so this is my memory of it. I had sold a lot of currency in EverQuest before, so I was already pretty aware of the illicit gold selling market. I'd also sold gold in Final Fantasy XI, and in WoW I never did because I found a different way to make money off of the game by getting hired by the company. So I was always on the other side. So to my understanding is that it existed right from the get-go, right? Because I had already been frequenting some of these sites. I already known about them. And to me, it was just like I finally got to see the other side of it. So I imagine that that was going on. It wasn't something that was getting reported a whole lot other than the people that were spamming the zones. And that was an ongoing battle that our customer service was having with those players. Every time we banned one of them, they would pop up with a new account and start spamming again. And the players hated that spam. And it was constant back then. Like, it was a major issue. Having the general chats of all the major cities was almost like a bazaar or something like that, with unscrupulous characters all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely remember that being a frustrating thing. Just seeing gold spammers.
I mean, you would get a lot more tells too. You would get a lot more, any way that they could reach you, mail, you would get them through tells. Any way that they could get to you, they were trying.
One of the things that I always do, even today, is whenever I get a tell for a gold seller or someone like that, I always report them. I feel like it's like an important thing that everybody should do. But it's so much less bad now than it used to be. Like, I remember when I started playing, there being you going into a capital city and just seeing walls of text.
Oh, it was completely unavoidable. And like when we went through phases in Classic where it was happening a little bit, like we'd get annoyed. We'd like, we got another tell. We got another tell. It was nothing like it was back in vanilla, man. It was relentless. And some of those companies were pretty vicious. We got into some very weird account creating, banning wars with some of these companies before, where it no longer became about spamming the zone with stuff. Sometimes it was even just about slandering the GMs or just saying illicit stuff that they thought was going to get upset us more. But, to us, it was kind of more all the same. It was all bad behavior that we were just trying to get out of the game.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, that's why in the retail version of this client, there's such limited chat functionality for the free to play trial accounts. It's because I assume they just didn't want to deal with all of that spam.
Yeah, I mean, I think even right from the get-go, they maybe had some of those features initially, and then they very quickly learned that there was not a lot to be gained by giving free accounts a lot of those privileges, and there was a whole lot to give a lot of those illicit players, and it was making the experience worse for the pay players. So, I'm sure a lot of that got refined over time, but that was maybe within the first month of them having those free accounts that went to level 20 or whatever. Did they quickly realize, they can't be sending mail and they can't be making trades, and it was being used for mostly stuff that was annoying players rather than helping them.
Yeah, it's funny that we're talking about this because another game that I haven't been playing very much lately because of a lot of problems that it's been having, but another game that I am a huge fan of, Destiny 2, has a very similar problem. The season that they recently, like after parting from Activision, they moved to Steam, and they went free to play. And the big problem is now that they're on Steam, which has significantly less like cheating functionality. Like it doesn't track cheaters as much as like the Battle.net client does, or people using like outside like aimbotting and whatnot. Because they're on Steam like that, people just like get banned and then create new Steam accounts, download the game again, and then continue cheating, and it's like a huge rampant problem right now. So I definitely understand that like aspect in WoW, just as the application from other games that I've been like playing and watching.
Well, and these have always kind of been issues with Blizzard games, and World of Warcraft was really the first one to really try and buck this hard because it was their first subscription game, right? Like if people were cheating in StarCraft before, it kind of was what it was. I think they got some of those people banned, but I knew a lot of people that were serial StarCraft cheaters that nothing ever happened to their account. I think a lot of the stuff, the more competitive sides, they tried to do more, but for the most part, they kind of just let the Wild West be the Wild West until they started making this a premium service. And then as the company grew and they really started trying to create these competitive environments, there became more of an incentive to try and stop that. But with the free-to-play model, it's very difficult because it's so easy to get another account.
Yeah, it is. And it's a huge problem. And I don't think it's necessarily as huge a problem in like WoW now as it was back in the day, and how it is in other games. But like, yeah, it's definitely something you have to design your game around.
Yeah, I mean, just like anything else, if you're going to create a space, you have to have some degree of control over that space without a doubt. And for Blizzard and for all, the game developers, figuring out how to deal with cheaters, how to deal with players that are selling currency illicitly, or, always going to be problems they're trying to solve. One thing that was discovered these last couple of weeks, though, that was not announced in really any capacity as far as I know, was this /WG, or the Wargames function, first reported by Druid Flag Carrier Extraordinaire Yes Master, and a discovery that was, I believe, originally made on the Chinese servers, but was then later noted to be functional on the North American and the EU client, and then later confirmed by Blizzard to be sticking around. Wargames came without really any fanfare, and I'm still kind of wondering, how come we've never heard about this?
Yeah, as a retail player, I've never heard about it in retail, and it's honestly, it seems like more of a thing that they would have added to retail first, like some sort of side effect that we would have gotten in Classic. So what the Wargames functionality is it's the ability to challenge, if you have a pre-made group, it's the ability for your group to challenge another pre-made group in Warsong, in Arathi, and the important thing to note about it is there's no honor, you can't complete quests. It's just a PvP mode where you get nothing, which really just says it's either for fun competition or for content creators to do things like to create a tournament or whatnot. And it's incredibly strange to me that we saw no, like, it just sort of appeared. There was never I watch incredibly intently every blue post tracker. Like I have multiple monitors, and just one of my monitors universally just has Wowhead like getting refreshed every so often. So if there's a blue post, I know what's going on, and I've never heard of this. It's crazy.
Yeah, I was really just kind of surprised by the whole scenario. It's not really every day that, somebody that you played some Warsong Gulch against and occasionally tuned into their stream makes like this major discovery that really has a lot of implications for those of us that like competitive play and like tournament play as well. Like I said, that has great news for people that are going to want to run fan run tournaments and things like that. The flip side of it, of course, is that this functionality is really going to be probably limitedly used to just things like that, and it doesn't really address any other issues with WoW Classic's current PvP system. You know, not having any sort of brackets for pre-mades or solo players or anything in between is still a major issue for a lot of players partaking in the PvP system. But I do like that this will at least allow us to kind of have this little bit of a playground to play with in what I would say is a version of the game that, you know, we want to be able to have a playground like that in, honestly. Like, we'd like to be able to play our WoW characters against each other and do fan-made tournaments and stuff with these characters, and this is a positive thing, I think, any way you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because it's one of those things that's like not in Classic, but like it can't affect Classic in any way other than make it better for people who are like trying to have fun.
Yeah, and this is
Like,
always goes back to what we've kind of always talked about on this show, which is, you know, as especially, you know, myself, who's a huge fan of Classic, this is my favorite version of WoW and probably always will be. But at the same time, if I could get even more enjoyment out of it without ruining the integrity of that, I would definitely take them up on that offer. And this is definitely that.
yeah, I think I agree. It feels like something that, I mean, it's sort of like the baby version of like rated battlegrounds from retail, but like, again, it's just for content creators. You don't get anything out of it. It really just seems like there's no downside.
Well, and it's also given the people that maybe aren't interested in grinding, but maybe did want to have that grudge match with somebody, particularly on their own faction, that they never got to have. You can have that now. That avenue has now been opened up to you, but it's also taken outside of the core of the game, which I think is also good for the people that don't really want the continuity, the immersion of the original game broken, which I think is still kind of important until we get through phase 6. And I think after we hit phase 6, I think a lot changes about the future of Classic. I mean, maybe it's all just TBC, but I think that would maybe be selling this version of the game a little bit short, in my opinion, because I kind of feel like there should always be this version of the game, you know, even from like a, you know, historical standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's important to preserve it. I would say that even though I'm pro a Classic Plus system, I would never want them to fully abandon actual Classic. Like, I think in my ideal world, they'd probably, you know, they'd have the player base like answer, you know, you answer a question, right? Like, do you want to play? Do you want to like they keep all the servers the way they are, and then they'd ask, do you want to play Classic the way it is, or do you want to try Classic Plus? And if you say you want to try Classic Plus, it gives you the option to transfer your character over. So once they figure out what the numbers are, really, of the people who want to stay and the people who want to go, they can like balance the server populations from there.
Yeah, I think that's something that would give the people that want to expand on this world an option, but also still preserve the history, and the importance of the history of that game, I think, is important if you can. This is something that's always a problem with MMOs, and it's always kind of a worry about MMOs. I can go back and play the original Final Fantasy VII, right? I just played through the remake, and like a lot of people that played the remake, it spurred an interest in playing the original again. And I can go back and play the original as I played the original and compare it 1-to-1 with the remake and go back with my memory and, you know, do the whole thing. This is something that is not possible in MMOs, or it really hasn't been. So preserving what is there, to me, is sort of important. And this is kind of them going back and them remaking Classic and getting back to this version of the game, I think, was an important part of them kind of remembering the roots and what made this game successful in the first place, too. And I'd be very shocked if it didn't influence Shadowlands even.
Oh, it's definitely already influencing Shadowlands. In alpha, quite a bit of the changes that they've made have already pretty much been. So, like, if we're being honest, a lot of the people who complain, who are the loudest content creators, even the community itself, um, complain about a lot of the problems that retail has, um, versus like things like loot RNG, where people want to be able to, you know, my best in slot cloak is from Baron Rivendare. I want to be able to look at what dungeon my best in slot cloak is and go get it. I don't want to have to deal with this RNG system. That's one of the big complaints in retail, right? So yes, Classic's just proving to Blizzard what everybody sort of knew all along, is they really need to go back to sort of a simpler time. Like, yes, obviously having all that RNG is going to be more player engagement, but like, at what cost are you doing it? Like, people feel a sense of accomplishment when they finally get their Baron Rivendare cloak, because it means they don't have to fucking kill Baron Rivendare over and over again anymore.
Yeah, there is something to be said about climbing a mountain and then being happy with your accomplishment at the end of it. Well, I definitely played more hours of WoW at a higher concentration while I was grinding to rank 14. I can tell you the satisfaction of having gotten there and then being able to enjoy the game at a different pace was a huge part of my final enjoyment of the overall product of the game. And sometimes it's nice to climb a mountain and then put it down. In the same way, sometimes it's nice to revisit an old game or play a brand new one and go through the story and then not revisit it later. Certain aspects of that game kind of sort of need parts of that while still coinciding with the overarching main part of the game that you're doing, if it's going to continue to create opportunities for you to get excited about it, right? My overall goal wasn't to do just rank 14, and I kind of gave myself a projection that would make sure that that was just a piece of it. But man, that was a fun piece that I look back at fondly, and it was just a piece of the game. It wasn't the whole game.
Yeah, but I think for a lot of people, and me personally, one of the things that, as far as like my completionist like primate brain likes to do, is I like to make a list of things. Like, these are the good items for my class. And I like to just go at that list one at a time and say, okay, what dungeon has the most items for me? Well, I'm going to run that dungeon until I don't need any items out of it anymore. And like, that's like the best time I have in this game. Like, when we first got to 60, and I said, okay, well, I need 5 items out of Ubers. I might as well just spam run Ubers until I don't need anything anymore. That was just like, that was perfect, because when I finally got everything out of it, I was like, nice. Now I've got these best in slot pieces. Let's go get the next ones and the next ones. And I really do think that's one of the big things that's influencing it now, because of just how popular Classic has been. And I think that moving forward, keeping that in mind is going to be, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I suggest so many people who have been enjoying Classic, who really didn't like retail, especially because of how bad the retail expansion, this specific expansion, Battle for Azeroth, has been. It's one of the main reasons why I suggest to all of my Classic friends, maybe give Shadowlands a try when it comes out. I mean, obviously it's a ways out, and the alpha is still very early, so there's a lot of stuff that could change. But so far, everything is just changing for the better, and you know, you're paying for the game already. Like, it's the same cost for entry. Like, you don't have to pay anything. Well, I mean, I guess you have to buy the new game, but I mean, you're already paying for a subscription. Is sort of my point.
Yeah, the success of Classic and the enjoyment of Classic I've had has actually endeared me a little bit more to giving Shadowlands a try when the time comes. I will say this though, if it interferes with Classic in any way, then I probably will be less receptive to it. So I better have killed Kel'Thuzad before Shadowlands comes around, otherwise I won't be interested. However, they might be able to get me on the other side if things, you know, are work out and they bring some of these features that made Classic so successful to me. I might be willing to give this version of the game a try when I really peaked out at Wrath of the Lich King. I think around there was when the game was too far removed from the one that I liked at the time for me to want to keep going. This is their opportunity to get somebody like me back into the system again that loved the classic formula. You've just had a lot of success with me. I'm still going at it strong. I'm still enjoying myself, and I'm willing to give another expansion a shot if we can find some medium ground where we can get back to something that feels a little bit more like this game.
Yeah, I mean, plus a lot of the people, all the people who I'm suggesting to consider trying this with, you're part of a guild now. If your whole guild is doing something like trying retail, I mean, you're going to have more fun playing with the people you like. I fully expect we won't have killed Kel'Thuzad when Shadowlands come out. I think when Shadowlands comes out, we'll be talking about Nax as a patch. Like, we'll be looking at Phase 6 thinking, when is this coming out? It's going to be soon. But I think it'll be a decent bit after the real push in Shadowlands. Like, I fully expect Shadowlands will release probably when we have AQ on solid farm status.
That'll be interesting to me because, I mean, getting Kel'Thuzad down is definitely a huge part of my to-do list with WoW Classic. I think it would be almost kind of breaking the continuity that I had with Classic if we jumped into this whole other expansion with different characters and, all of this. So I almost hope it's the other way around, but when would you project that maybe Shadowlands might come out, or have anything like that been said?
So, we know Shadowlands is coming out in Q4 this year.
Okay.
My strong guess is, since BlizzCon's not going to happen based on the pandemic, I think they're going to release it first week in November. That's my call. And if we're being honest, I fully expect AQ, maybe the gate patch, to come out, like the war effort to start in July. But if that happens in July and we're looking at like an AQ 40 gate opening in August or early September, we're going to be doing Encourage for 5 or 6 months. I don't expect Nax to launch until at least February.
That would definitely be a long time frame. I wonder if 5 and 6 are slated to be that far apart, or if they're maybe going to be a little bit closer together, like some of the other phases have been. We haven't really ever been given a timeline on what to expect, so it's kind of just been at Blizzard's whim, or at their discretion of how they feel things are going.
Well, so here's my real reasoning for this. I think Blizzard's going to learn from the mistake that they did in actual retail Classic, which is release Encourage and Nax far too close together, making one of them, because obviously it's going to be different this time because guilds have a lot more information. The power level of everyone is way crazier at this point than it was back when AQ came out. But for the most part, and I know for a fact you experienced this issue, my guild just stopped doing AQ when Nax came out because the early bosses were just better and easier. Like, Twin Emps were harder than the first 4 or 5 bosses. Like, we could do Mexina, and we couldn't do Twin Emps. And why would we want to do Twin Emps when we could do Mexina? Like, her gear is just way better.
Yeah, this definitely hurt our Cthulhu progress, because while people were starting to get frustrated with our very near but not quite kills on Cthulhu, it made a lot more sense to get into Nax and kill 4 or 5 bosses instead, which then hurt the bottom maybe 10-20% of your guild that is kind of on the fence in that 40-man, which this was kind of a rampant thing, especially on the smaller servers back then. A lot of us were fighting to keep our 40-man together, and if 5 or 6 people were kind of back then, it was a lot harder to find a viable replacement. And I think that was the downfall of a lot of guilds during that time. I wonder if they're going to gauge the progress that players have with Encourage a little bit more, and maybe see, like, all right, once they get enough people through AQ, they'll release Nax, or if they just kind of have a firm timeline for it.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, because again, I think that was one of their bigger mistakes, like, historically, is how, I mean, almost like, what was 100 guilds killed Kel'Thuzad before, or like 120 guilds killed Kel'Thuzad. There's like a list somewhere. And yeah, for smaller servers, it must have been challenging because there probably was only one or two big 40 mans on each server.
Yeah, I mean, the level of elitism that was going to need to take place in order to be a part of some of those groups was getting a lot higher than the original model for WoW even really took. And I think that that was sort of an unintended consequence, honestly. I don't think they really wanted it to be as exclusive as it became, but it was also players were loving the game and they were looking for ways to challenge the players and push the boundaries of the difficulties of the raid. And that was just a very weird spot in WoW's history where there was both expansion of what the capabilities were while also trying to tune it right for the player base that they had and the tools that they had at the time.
Well, so they've since Naxx as a patch has come out, they've also made great strides in making it so that there's like actual catch up mechanics for people. So if you started playing WoW during the Naxx patch, you were never going to do Naxx. Never. Like you would have never had the gear. You would have never had your character keyed. So I think that was one of the bigger problems then too. Even though it didn't seem like as big a problem. Like the issue for me is like the server that I was on. We had like 10 guilds that were at Cthulhu. So like we had a pretty populated server. At least I felt like it was populated. We had like all of them were alliance guilds. There were still horde guilds killing it too.
Yeah, that was definitely larger than mine that I played when I was on those bosses.
Yeah, I was on Ice Crown, which was one of the original beta servers or original alpha servers.
Yeah, had I stuck on Tichondrius, I probably would have enjoyed a similar thing. But when we re-rolled, we went to a smaller server and, it got a lot larger during the Burning Crusade, but it never housed more than a couple of power guilds. And because of that, there wasn't really a whole lot of recruiting within our own server, which was a problem, right? People were actually recruiting from our server, not to it.
I actually don't remember. I think around that time, wasn't that when they allowed paid character transfers to start happening?
Right. That's actually what ended up killing my Horde guild on that server. And then I transferred my Alliance character over to it to play with the Alliance guild because they were the other guild that I would, we played them in Battleground so much that we became close with those guys. We really respected their skill and everything. So I raided with them through the last part of AQ and Naxx. And the thing that was really just kind of interesting about it, the dynamic on playing on a smaller server was we lost our main tank to a guild that was already beating all the bosses in AQ. So we lost our guild that was on AQ to one that was already beating it. And then we were joined one that was just further along than we were at the time, but also not beating it all the way. And because of that, we never were able to recruit from other servers. We were one that would get recruited from after people got the gear, which really hurt the guild that was getting recruited from quite a bit, even if we were the top dogs on our own server.
Yeah, I can recognize that. I mean, I spent a long time as the top guild. I spent a long time in the top guild on the server, so like, I never had we were a recruitment. We typically were the people doing the poaching, but I recognize it as a problem since we did so much of it.
Yeah, well, it was different. Like, it was different at different times, right? When we were on the Horde side, we were doing all the poaching, but we were maybe being a little bit too elitist at the time. We didn't necessarily like all of our poaching prospects. We were kind of more hoping for people that were at the same place that we were at, but the people that were at the same place that we were at wanted to be further than we were at. So like that was kind of the issue. And what ended up destroying the Horde guild that we had was our main tank, who had our Thunder Fury, wanted to be it in a guild that had, multiple Thunder Furies and, the whole deal. And we couldn't compete with that. And the people that could were on other servers. And it didn't matter that we were the best on this server because there was a better guild on another server out there. And if you didn't have that, you couldn't really draw from other servers very easily. It's different now, though, because so many servers are very large. I imagine this is more of an issue for smaller servers. You used to see it a lot in the early days of Alterac Valley. Maybe you still do, but I remember seeing a lot of open recruitment to guilds like Onslaught, to guilds like Apes, and those through AV, because that was the meeting place of all the players on all the servers.
Yeah. I mean, I remember Kurthos doing tons of recruitment for Final Boss and for our server in AV.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it
We
was
have,
just for Final Boss at all times. It was a lot of times it was for the server of Grobulus, and just kind of recognizing that, like, yeah, he was definitely trying to bring people in for a server, but also kind of showing other people, like, hey, Grobulus is actually a little bit more hardcore than you think it might be.
yeah, we are a pretty competitive server.
Yeah, and while I would say that I don't think we get the, White Mane maybe gets the reputation of being like the try-hardiest of the try-hard servers, we're definitely not one of the servers that you think doesn't have a population or a group of people that is, able to clear dungeons. We've got some people that are really pushing for good clear times, and, again, maybe not being the absolute most try-hard, but certainly holding our own.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Actually, looking back at it too, Whitemane was one of the servers that I was considering, and kind of the final nail in the coffin was them. Blizzard said on another WoW podcast actually that I was listening to. This is, if their server's already full, if we're already saying, like, maybe consider not showing up there. And I knew that Whitemane was one of the overpopulated servers, and that was kind of the final one that goes, you know what? I think Grob is the spot. I don't think I want to deal with that. And I think that this is going to be the better overall, more like vanilla experience. And I got to say, I feel like I chose right.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely the right call, and it's exactly the reason we're here too, over Herod.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, to me, the deciding factor was going to be that for this game to be fun, for me, it's got to go just beyond raid day. I can't just make it about just that one thing. It has to be fun. There has to be moments in between those moments in order for it to really fill out the world and feel like it's a large world that has a big cast of characters that you want to reach out and meet and know everybody's stories and see everybody's different play style. I don't think I would enjoy being on a server so much where everybody subscribed to just one play style. I think that actually kind of hurts the overall experience of the game, and you miss out on some really cool people that have ways to play the game that you maybe never would, but might really enjoy. So speaking of those play styles, it should be mentioned that character creation is been lifted off the server of Grobulus. So if you were looking to make a character, that is back on. If you were looking to switch factions, you can finally do so. Whatever your thing may be, Grobulus is once again open for character creation. So we are back to it, and we missed out on layering altogether, but layering has been lifted off of every other server as well. So business as usual in Azeroth.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where the population went, because I haven't really noticed queues lately. Was it just like some weird 2-week phenomenon where everybody wanted to play at once?
I imagine that COVID-19 had to have something to do with just the sudden uptick. Gaming in general was just getting a huge uptick during that time, and I'm sure a few people gave WoW Classic a second look during that time. I'm still sort of confused at how those waves happen, though. Like, that WoW to me is something that, even though I've had some moments that I wouldn't describe as a slow burn, I still feel like it's a slow burn game, right? Like, you can't put all your cards on the table right away when it comes to WoW.
Yeah, for sure. And that's it really seemed like that was the case for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think maybe some of the people that returned, we had some people in the game like this early on that played real hard and burned out real quick. And I wonder if maybe it was some of those people returning, giving WoW a second look, and came back and played really hard and kind of re-burned out. Like, I would say maybe the people that, played for a month and decided, yeah, I'm going to go for the rank 14 grind, and then realized, like, oh yeah, this is, you got to pace yourself for that grind. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, for sure.
But either way, character creation being back open on Grobulus is certainly welcome news, I think, overall, even though it's become quite the meme to say that this is not a server to transfer to or to roll a character on. I think when it comes to players that actually want to be a part of the community, I think that there's always room for more people on Grobulus. Speaking of those people on Grobulus, congratulations to the 30 or so players that took place in the graduation ceremony put on by the Azeroth RP Planning Committee. Thank you everybody that participated in that, and just a very cool concept to have not only a virtual graduation for the actual grads in high school and college, but for the graduates of various WoW related endeavors. So congratulations to each and every one of your grads, and a huge thank you to Black Plague and Aquaho for yet another creative and interesting roleplay event on the server of Grobulus.
Yeah, I didn't actually attend that because while it was going on, I was actually at a graduation party for my sister who just finished her degree. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people who, because of this situation, aren't really getting to do what they've worked so hard for, which is like sort of, I mean, I personally don't care about the moment that like I got my diploma or my degree or everything. Like, that graduation ceremony wasn't important to me. Like, I was happy to be done. But I know that a lot of people who have worked really hard do look forward to that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you were one of the people that was looking forward to it, just having the conditions of the world right now strip that from you, it's got to be a little bit of a bummer, right? That you'd be looking forward to something for so long, and that's how things just shook out. I think there's a lot of things, I saw a funny thing on Reddit that said something along the lines of, anybody who was asked the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years, 5 years ago, was wrong.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the, I watched part of a speech by I guess the junior poet laureate of the United States. She just graduated from Harvard, and the speech that she talked about was the fact that like the generation of people who are graduating right now are really going to be the people handling the future, because all the stuff that's happening right now is going to fall on effectively us or them. I mean, they're like a slightly younger generation than I am, but we're all the ones that are going to have to deal with like the backlash of the world after this epidemic, because it's not going to be the same world.
Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt that this has influenced a lot of things forever, really. This is kind of the same way that, not that it's exactly the same, but, I think we all felt this. If you survived through 9/11, then you kind of know what I'm talking about. We didn't know how at the time, but I think we all understood that the world was going to be fundamentally different after that day. And we didn't exactly know how that day, but I think it was just kind of felt. And this is another one of those moments that has happened that has just kind of felt like, yeah, things are going to be a little bit different from here on out.
Yeah, exactly. With that in mind, it's going to be, I think it was nice of them to set that event up.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, another, not event, but something on the Grob subreddit that definitely deserves to be brought up. We hear a lot about the negative stuff that's going on Reddit, but Soupy is back with a good interactions reporting megathread number 2. If you have somebody on the server of Grobulus that has done some good and you want the server to know about it, go on the Grob subreddit and post, and just let everybody know who's been doing a little bit of good on the server of Grobulus lately, as there are a lot of them. Sometimes it's just as simple as helping with a quest, or just somebody helping out, maybe not even yourself, but maybe a younger player or something like that. If you have a good interaction, go ahead and spread a little bit of that joy, because it's definitely a time when something like that can do a little bit of good. One more post that is potentially interesting if you are interested in the Black Lotus situation regarding bots. Dr. Mo has posted looking to create a Discord server, it looks like, to potentially take back the Black Lotus spawn from a lot of the bots that have started to take it up. And this may just involve trying to figure out who some of these bots are and maybe doing a little bit of coordination with the other faction to kill the ones that you can't kill. But anything that gets bots off of the Black Lotuses, I am majorly in favor of. So if this sounds like something that you want to get in on, definitely hit up Dr. Mo about this, because Black Lotus deserves to be in the hands of the players, not the RMT.
Yeah, they're far too scarce at this point for it to be okay for there to be bots making gold off them.
Yeah, absolutely. With the amount that the price is just gone up and the projection of what we can expect, certain servers have gotten over 300 gold. And I hate to say it, but there's no way we're not trending toward that. We'll just wait until AQ happens. That's going to be Grobulous.
And that's super frustrating. I mean, I really of everything not classic, I want Blizzard to fix. It's the economy, because the economy is just worse than ever.
I mean, the problem is it might have worked out if we were bound to the original population sizes. Maybe not, but these population sizes, it's definitely not working out. There's just too many people raiding, and there's just... I've gotten away with not using them in Blackwing Lair for some time, but when we hit AQ, I'm definitely going to want to be popping flasks again, and tanks are pretty much always wanting to pop them. Like, there's just never a time when you don't want your tank to have extra health.
Yeah, I have to pop it every week, and it is an incredibly frustrating burden to farm all of the stuff. Like, one, with all the bots farming Black Lotuses, I can't always reliably farm a Black Lotus, because like for a while that's how I was funding it, but it's not as easy to get Black Lotuses now. So the alternative is to try and farm enough gold to buy it, and every week it gets harder and harder.
Oh yeah, and the thing about gold farming too is it's one of the things that you can absolutely burn yourself out on the game by pushing a little bit too hard. I felt a little bit of this when ZG first hit. I was really gung-ho farming Zul Garub, and it almost became a little bit too much, and it kind of prompted me to go like, you know what, I've got a nice little cache of gold, I'm going to sit back and just, you know, maybe not overspend and just kind of get what I need for raids for a little bit. Because if you're constantly having to farm to meet the demands of every single raid and you're constantly pushing yourself further, it's kind of a way to just get yourself in an endless cycle of either always farming for the next raid, and that can also kind of lead to less fun outcomes in the game.
Yeah, I mean, again, I will tell you right now that I sort of felt burnt out. Like, I haven't been playing a whole lot of Classic outside of our raids recently, just because of how honestly frustrated I am with having to farm so much gold for raid consumables.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm definitely not willing to give up is using the consumables. So it's always going to have to become a part of the day, but figuring out ways to sort of minimize the amount of time that I'm having to spend farming is a big part of that. One thing I definitely recommend is if you can farm in groups and, you know, you can actually turn it into events a little bit more, it definitely helps, because I find my enjoyment of the game definitely takes a hit when WoW becomes a solo game. I think I'd rather be playing solo games if I'm playing a solo game as opposed to an MMO, as they tend to do those functions a lot better. And I felt that a lot when I was playing the Final Fantasy VII Remake, because I was playing this new game that was, you know, it's designed as a single player game, and I was doing a lot of stuff where I'm going like, oh, hey, wow, this is actually a better single player experience than World of Warcraft is. You got to get back to making these things fun group activities, I think. And farming is a difficult one because it is sort of a personal thing, but so many people need to do it that it makes sense that it would be done in a group.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the best, most enjoyable farming that I've done has been like jump runs, but I have to get someone with me to help. So it's not something I can.
Right, and this gets a little bit into like class makeup, right? Like you need to find, you know, the person that you want to jump run with. They got to be the right class combination, and I think sometimes it helps to kind of take as many of those roles on yourself as you can, right? Like, all right, you got to get yourself a raiding character and then a farming character and maybe make yourself an alchemist. But there definitely becomes a point when there's like a little bit of it is too much. And I think that when you're at the point where like, all right, do I need to have my own personal shaman so I can always jump run and all that's starting to get to be like a little bit too much, and it's a barrier to entry. It's nicer when these things are a little bit easier to facilitate, and I would say right now for the raid consumables is they're getting more expensive. RMTs are raising up the price of gold and Black Lotuses are going higher. It's kind of just making it maybe a little bit, maybe temporarily less attractive thing to be doing at the moment. I think that this is going to change when AQ hits, though, because I think the excitement with a new raid is definitely going to bring the desire to prep. And I think this is also a symptom of we've beaten BWL enough times now to where I'm no longer feeling that need and that push to farm quite as hard as I used to either.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully they announce AQ soon.
Yeah, I think that that's really what... At the end of the day, I think that would be where I think a lot of us are at, right? We've been working on BWL for a while. We've got pug groups doing it. We've got GDKPs out there for it. We've got tons of groups that are beating it now. I think over 50 guilds on the server have. I think we're reaching AQ territory. It's time. I can't wait.
Yeah, I fully agree.
But once again, if you are looking to take that Black Lotus back, get in contact with Dr. Mo because he would like to help. And it doesn't matter whether you're Horde or Alliance, like a lot of coordination on this server. I'm sure there'll be point people on both sides, but this is something that I definitely would encourage from the players is we don't want to be letting any of the illicit players of Grobulus get their hands on any more Black Lotuses than they should be. But with that being said, is there anything else going on that caught your attention, Myth?
No. Just doing some fantastic Silithus stuff, PvP and PvE at the same time, which is always fun. Yeah.
Yep, I'm definitely excited at the prospect of a little bit of a time in Silithus with the boys, and we'll have to see how that goes. But until then... If you are a fan of the show, you liked it, please like and subscribe and upvote us on the subreddit, catch us on SoundCloud and YouTube. And as always, hit us up in-game and on the subreddit if you have any questions, you have any topics you'd like us to discuss, or just topics that you want us to bring up on the podcast, questions you have, because we would love to answer them. All right, but that's all we have for you this week. We will catch you all next week.